You probably think you know why advertising works. Clever slogans, catchy jingles, maybe a good commercial here and there. But that's not really the story. The truth is, advertising didn't take over the world all at once. It crept in, slowly, quietly, one decision at a time. And by the time we noticed, we were already living inside it. This isn't just a story about ads. It's a story about how attention itself became a product. And by the end of this, you might find yourself wondering, how many of your thoughts were ever really your own? And here's the strange thing. I'm telling you this while you're probably just laying there, half tired, maybe hoping your brain settles down soon. And that's the trick with stories like this. They're not meant to wake you up. They're meant to drift alongside you, slow, soft, almost boring, on purpose. Not because the ideas are boring, but because when you slow things down, the real patterns start to show. That's why I make these videos like this. Gentle, quiet, something you can drift off to without meaning to. And honestly, some people comment later, saying they woke up thinking differently about the things they see every day. Maybe that'll be you, too. Or maybe you'll just sleep. Either way works. All right, let's get into it now. This isn't just a business story. It's a setup. The air hangs thick and still tonight, doesn't it? A kind of humid quiet that makes the mind wander down corridors it usually ignores. And down one of those corridors, dimly lit and smelling faintly of old paper and printer's ink, lies a peculiar question. How did selling become a profession? How did the simple act of offering a thing you have in exchange for a thing someone else has evolve into this vast, intricate, sometimes unsettling machinery that hums constantly beneath the surface of everything we see, everything we hear, everything we desire? It wasn't always this way. Once, not so very long ago, in the grand scheme of things, people didn't really advertise. They just sold things, directly, simply, often silently. A farmer with his surplus grain at the market stall, a blacksmith hammering iron beside the road, a potter displaying wares outside their workshop. The product was the advertisement, its existence and utility speaking plainly enough to those who needed it. There was a kind of purity in that directness, an unspoken contract rooted in immediate need and tangible value. The transaction existed within the tight weave of community, of known faces and reputations built over years, over generations even. Persuasion, if it happened at all, was a quiet conversation, a demonstration, a shared understanding of what constituted good value. It was embedded in the rhythm of life, inseparable from the making and the using. There were no middlemen of the mind, no specialists dedicated solely to the art of creating want where perhaps only need resided, or amplifying a whisper of need into a roar of perceived necessity. Selling was a function, an aspect of making, not a discipline unto itself. Yet, somewhere along the line, particularly as the world began to shudder and accelerate with the engines of industry, as people crowded into cities and became strangers to one another, as factories pumped out identical goods in quantities that far outstripped the immediate, visible needs of any single marketplace, something shifted. A gap emerged, a yawning chasm between the maker and the buyer, now anonymous to each other, separated by distance and scale and the sheer volume of stuff. And it was in this quiet space, this gap between what was needed and what was merely desired, between what was made and who might want it, that the first tendrils of professional persuasion began to grow. Not with a shout, you understand, but with something closer to a whisper, a tentative, often clumsy, and sometimes deeply weird experiment in bridging that divide. This wasn't the carnival barker's loud hustle. That was ancient, transactional, immediate. This was something else, something slower, more insidious, aimed not just at the pocket, but at the imagination, at the sense of self. It was the birth pangs of advertising, not as a loud announcement, but as a profession built on understanding and then gently manipulating the currents of human attention and desire. Consider the sheer, almost absurd, strangeness of this early frontier. Imagine, if you will, the scene. Respectable authors, men and women of letters, accustomed to wrestling with plot and character, perhaps dreaming of literary fame, sitting down at their desks, not to conjure grand narratives of love or war, but to craft serialized stories specifically designed to sell soap. This wasn't metaphor. This was the literal, peculiar reality fostered by companies like Procter and Gamble in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They needed to sell more soap, more than people strictly needed. They needed to create a habit, a ritual, an association. And they realized that the burgeoning power of mass media, newspapers and magazines reaching thousands, then millions, of homes could be harnessed, not just through a blunt declaration of product virtues, but by embedding their message within the fabric of entertainment itself. So they paid writers. They funded stories. Long, winding, melodramatic tales filled with virtue imperiled, and then triumphantly restored, aired on the radio, or printed in magazines, often sponsored explicitly by soap brands. These narratives, these soap operas, became vehicles for a subtle, repetitive message. Cleanliness wasn't just next to godliness. It was the very foundation of social acceptance, romantic success, moral standing. The drama hooked the audience. The characters became familiar, and the association between emotional resolution and a particular brand of soap became, drip by drip, episode by episode, ingrained. It was advertising hiding in plain sight, not demanding attention like a street vendor, but occupying attention like a neighbor sharing gossip. The soap company wasn't just selling a cleaning agent. It was selling a narrative where their product was the hero's reward, the symbol of order restored. They were paying for stories, yes, but more importantly, they were paying for attention, for a sustained, intimate engagement with the consumer's imagination, far beyond the fleeting moment of a shouted slogan. It was a quiet revolution in persuasion disguised as entertainment. And this leads us, inevitably, to the silent, powerful engine that made this possible. The hidden force that would fundamentally reshape not just selling, but the very nature of information itself. The newspapers and magazines. Think of them, those vast, ink-smudged behemoths of the industrial age, promising connection, knowledge, diversion to a populace increasingly disconnected from their rural roots and thrust into the anonymous currents of city life. They offered news, yes, but also serialized fiction, household tips, fashion plates, glimpses into worlds beyond the factory gate or the tenement window. But producing this torrent of words and images, printing it, distributing it, required immense capital. The cover price alone couldn't sustain it. not reliably, not at the scale required to reach everyone. And so, almost by necessity, a symbiosis emerged, tentative at first, then deeply entrenched. The blank spaces surrounding the newsprint, the margins around the stories, the back pages, these became real estate, valuable real estate, space that could be sold to those manufacturers desperate to bridge the gap to their anonymous customers. The soap companies, the patent medicine peddlers, the newfangled appliance makers, they needed the audience the publications delivered. The publications desperately needed the revenue the advertisers provided. Slowly, subtly, advertising began to fund the information, the stories people read about distant wars or local scandals, the serialized novels they devoured, the advice columns they trusted. These were increasingly underwritten by the silent presence of ads for soap, for cereals, for tonics. It wasn't a conspiracy, it was an economic inevitability. The pursuit of mass audiences for selling created the financial bedrock for mass media. The whisper of advertising became the lifeblood of the public conversation, shaping its form, its reach, and, perhaps insidiously, its very content. Long before the concept of native advertising was ever coined, the media became dependent on the very force it hosted, setting a precedent that echoes powerfully and problematically right down to the algorithmic feeds of today. But persuasion, even professional persuasion, is rarely just about making a thing known. It's often about managing perception, about shaping a narrative, especially when the thing being sold carries complications. And few industries faced complications like the tobacco companies in the early 20th century. As concerns about health began to surface, however faintly at first, as social mores shifted, the cigarette manufacturers found themselves needing more than simple ads. They needed to change the conversation, to deflect criticism, to associate their product not with potential harm, but with sophistication, freedom, even health and vitality. They didn't just need to advertise, they needed to shape reality itself. And in this crucible of controversy, modern public relations, as a distinct arm of professional persuasion, essentially took its recognizable form. Figures like Edward Bernays, drawing consciously and sometimes controversially on the nascent understanding of psychology, even his uncle Sigmund Freud's work, pioneered techniques that went far beyond placing ads. They staged events designed to look like spontaneous news, women smoking publicly in a parade, labeled torches of freedom, recasting a taboo act as a feminist statement. They orchestrated endorsements from figures of authority, doctors included. They planted stories, crafted narratives of glamour and success inextricably linked to the cigarette. They understood that controlling the broader environment in which a product existed was as crucial as the direct sell. It was persuasion operating on a societal level, a conscious effort to engineer consent, to make the controversial seem commonplace, even desirable. The tobacco companies, facing existential threats to their image, became unwitting but highly effective midwives to the sophisticated, often shadowy, profession of PR, the art of managing perception itself, ensuring that the whisper of advertising wasn't drowned out by the clamor of dissent. They professionalized the manipulation of the context of selling. Before the sleek, Martinez-sipping archetype of Don Draper ever graced a Madison Avenue office, the foundations of his profession were being laid by a different breed, often eccentric, sometimes ethically dubious, always intensely curious individuals. In the 1920s, these weren't necessarily corporate men in gray flannel suits. They were often outsiders, hustlers, psychologists, even former carnival workers, fascinated by the human mind and driven by the new possibilities of mass communication. They began to ask fundamental questions that had never really been asked systematically about selling. Why do people buy? Not just what they need, but what they want, and why do they want it? What truly captures attention? Not just momentarily, but deeply, lastingly. How can you make someone feel something about a product? These pioneers weren't working from corporate manuals. They were experimenting, observing, often stumbling in the dark, but gradually uncovering profound psychological truths. They realized that attention wasn't grabbed solely by volume or size, but by novelty, by relevance, by tapping into existing anxieties or aspirations. They understood the power of repetition, not as annoyance, but as familiarity, breeding comfort, then preference. They grasped that buying decisions were rarely purely rational. They were deeply entangled with emotion, with identity, with the desire to belong, to improve, to escape. A soap wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about social acceptance, about being a good mother, about attractiveness. A car wasn't just transportation. It was freedom, status, power. These early ad men, though many resisted the title, were essentially amateur psychologists, hacking into the human operating system, mapping the vulnerabilities and desires that could be gently leveraged. They were learning the language of the subconscious, translating product features into emotional benefits long before brand positioning became a buzzword. Their tools were crude by today's standards: print ads, early radio spots, simple market surveys, but their insights were revolutionary. They were building the first maps of the consumer mind, turning selling from a blunt transaction into a subtle psychological art form. They were the ones learning how to whisper persuasively into the ear of the public. This brings us to the core of their early discoveries, the fundamental shift that defined the birth of advertising as a distinct profession, the psychology of attention itself. Contrary to what we might assume in our age of sensory overload, the earliest professional advertisers didn't start by screaming. The carnival barker screamed, the auctioneer screamed, the street hawker screamed. Their goal was immediate, impulsive action in a crowded, noisy environment. But the new breed, selling packaged goods through mass media to people in their quiet homes, realized that screaming was counterproductive. Influence began with capturing attention gently, almost imperceptibly, and then holding it, nurturing it. They learned to whisper, to weave their message into stories people wanted to hear, like the soap operas, to associate their product with positive, aspirational images: the healthy family, the sophisticated traveler, the successful businessman. To use repetition not as a hammer blow, but as a steady drip, building recognition and comfort. To leverage the power of suggestion, planting ideas rather than demanding compliance. They studied how the eye moved across a page, what colors evoked what feelings, how specific words resonated. They realized that creating a sense of lack, of a problem the consumer hadn't fully articulated, was often more effective than touting a solution. Halitosis wasn't a common term until Listerine's ads made it a terrifying social liability. They learned that flattery worked, the chosen few, for a luxury car, implying the reader was discerning. They grasped the power of social proof. 4 out of 5 doctors recommend. These weren't loud proclamations. They were subtle insinuations. They were learning to make the consumer feel that buying wasn't just acquiring an object, but acquiring a piece of a desirable life. Solving an unspoken anxiety. Joining a select group. The whisper was far more potent, far more lasting than the scream could ever be. It was the birth of branding as an emotional construct, not just a label. Looking back now, from this vantage point in the humming digital night, the significance of those early experiments in professional selling becomes profoundly clear. The soap operas, the newspaper's symbiosis, the tobacco PR, the psychological probing of the 1920s weirdos. These weren't just isolated historical curiosities. They were the initial, crucial steps in a vast, ongoing project. They were planting the seeds for something much, much bigger than anyone at the time could have possibly conceived. They were establishing the fundamental principle that selling could be abstracted from the direct exchange, could become a specialized skill set focused solely on influencing perception and desire. They proved that attention could be captured, measured, and monetized. They demonstrated that human psychology could be mapped and, to a degree, manipulated for commercial ends. They created the economic model, advertising, funding media, that would dominate information dissemination for a century. They birthed the professions: copywriter, art director, account executive, PR agent dedicated to this craft. They laid the groundwork for the concept of the brand as a living entity in the consumer's mind, distinct from the physical product itself. They normalized the idea that corporations would actively, professionally, and continuously seek to shape not just what we buy, but how we feel, what we aspire to, even who we believe ourselves to be. The quiet conversations in the marketplace became a deafening, multi-channeled symphony of persuasion conducted by unseen professionals. The whisper learned in those early days grew into the sophisticated, data-driven roar of modern marketing, amplified by technologies those soap company executives and eccentric stumbled into creating, born of industrial necessity and psychological curiosity, became the invisible architecture supporting our media landscapes, our digital experiences, and arguably shaping the very contours of contemporary desire. The strange origins of selling things as a profession turned out to be the origins of one of the most pervasive and powerful forces shaping the modern world. And it all began not with a confident shout, but with a tentative, curious, deeply human whisper into the gathering noise of a changing world. The city lights blur outside the window, a low electric hum, the only sound in the quiet hours past midnight. You've seen the pictures, haven't you? The sharp suits, the smoky rooms, the gleaming chrome of impossibly long cars. The Mad Men era. It feels like a time capsule of cool, a black and white photograph tinged with amber whiskey and the scent of expensive perfume. But beneath that alluring veneer, beneath the 3 martini lunches and the wry banter, something far more profound, far more unsettling, was being meticulously constructed. It wasn't just an era of economic boom, of suburban sprawl and tailfin reaching for the sky. It was the era where the very dreams of America, the intangible yearnings of its soul, were identified, packaged, and put up for sale by a new priesthood of psychological architects. The post-war boom wasn't merely fueled by factories churning out automobiles and washing machines. it was fundamentally sustained by a sophisticated of fulfillment into the receptive ears of a nation hungry for a new identity after the long shadow of war. Think of the sheer, almost overwhelming abundance suddenly available. Goods flooded the market, a tangible testament to industrial might. But abundance creates its own peculiar anxiety. You make them want it desperately, make them feel it defines them. This was the existential question facing manufacturers, and it found its answer not solely on assembly lines, but in the warrens of Madison Avenue ad agencies and the consulting offices of psychologists turned commercial strategists. The product itself began to recede, becoming merely a vessel, a physical token for something far more potent and elusive, a feeling, an identity, a promise of transformation. The refrigerator wasn't just an icebox. It was the gleaming heart of the modern, efficient, happy home, a symbol of the housewife's mastery and the family's prosperity. The car wasn't merely transportation, it was freedom, escape, status, a rolling embodiment of personal achievement and sexual allure. This subtle, seismic shift from selling the thing to selling the feeling the thing could bestow became the defining mantra. The hidden engine humming beneath the chrome and stucco surface of the 1950s and 60s. It was the birth of aspiration as a mass-market commodity, and underpinning this shift was a deliberate, calculated manipulation of the human psyche, a move beyond simple persuasion into the realm of engineered need. The most potent phrase, whispered in countless AD headlines, jingles, and television voiceovers, was deceptively simple. Asterisk, asterisk, you deserve this. Asterisk, asterisk, it was a psychological masterstroke. After the sacrifices of depression and war, after years of deferred gratification and collective effort, this message landed like a revelation. It tapped into a deep well of latent entitlement and unspoken exhaustion. It wasn't about need anymore, not in the basic sense. It was about reward. You've worked hard, you've endured, you've played by the rules. You've earned this moment of indulgence, this symbol of success, this small luxury. This message cleverly bypassed rational cost-benefit analysis and spoke directly to the emotional core, to pride, to a sense of fairness, to the longing for recognition. It transformed consumption from an act of necessity into an act of self-affirmation, a ritual of claiming one's rightful place in the burgeoning American dream. The new car, the washing machine, the vacation, the pack of cigarettes, they weren't just purchases, they were trophies, tangible proof that you belonged, that you were winning at this new consumer-driven version of life. The guilt of spending, the shadow of thrift ingrained by harder times, could be washed away by the powerful solvent of you've earned it. No figure embodies this fusion of psychology and commerce more starkly, or perhaps more controversially, than Edward Bernays, dubbed the father of public relations. Bernays wasn't just Freud's nephew. He was a dedicated and highly effective evangelist for applying his uncle's insights into the unconscious mind to the marketplace and the public square. Bernays understood, with chilling clarity, that people are not primarily rational actors, but creatures driven by deep-seated instincts, hidden desires, and irrational fears. His genius, or perhaps his cunning, lay in devising ways to link products and ideas to these powerful subterranean currents. Consider the humble bacon and eggs breakfast. In the 1920s, a hearty breakfast was common, but lighter fare was gaining traction. Bernays was hired by a bacon producer, facing stagnant sales. Instead of touting bacon's taste or price, Bernays, the psychological engineer, went deeper. He approached a physician, posed a seemingly innocuous question about whether a heavier breakfast might be more beneficial for health and vitality, and secured a letter stating such a view. Bernays then disseminated this expert opinion not through ads, but through newspapers, positioning the bacon and eggs breakfast not as habit or preference, but as a scientific recommendation for robust health and energy. He didn't just make bacon popular. He subtly rewired the cultural understanding of breakfast, linking sizzling fat in a pan to primal notions of strength and well-being. This was PR, not as mere publicity, but as the conscious, deliberate manufacturing of consent and the asterisk engineering of desire asterisk on a mass scale. Bernays saw the public as a vast, malleable entity to be steered by tapping into their hidden motivations, a philosophy that permeated the Mad Men era, shaping campaigns far beyond breakfast meat. Then came the true game changer, the medium that didn't just carry the message, but fundamentally altered the environment in which it was received: television. Radio had brought voices and jingles into the home, but television brought images, narratives, and personalities. It didn't just advertise. It entertained. It informed, it babysat, it became the electronic hearth around which families gathered. And seamlessly woven into this intimate domestic tapestry were the commercials. This was revolutionary. Ads were no longer confined to the pages of a magazine or a billboard glimpsed on the highway. They entered the living room, the den, the bedroom. They became part of the daily ritual, as familiar as the evening news or the sitcom laugh track. The hard sell softened, adapting to this new personal space. Ads became mini-dramas, slices of idealized life, featuring relatable characters or aspirational figures, encountering problems instantly solvable by the sponsor's product. The anxieties of the housewife, drudgery, social isolation, fear of failure were assuaged by a new detergent promising brighter clothes and thus brighter days, or a convenient cake mix whispering that effortless baking meant more time for love and approval. The flickering blue glow of the television set became a conduit for a continuous low-level hum of suggestion, blending advertising messages into the very fabric of daily existence. Products ceased to be mere objects. They became characters in the ongoing narrative of family life, imbued with the emotional resonance of the programs they interrupted. The line between content and commercial intent began, ever so subtly, to blur within the sanctuary of the home. Perhaps no single campaign better exemplifies the Mad Men era's mastery of selling feelings over function than the creation of the Marlboro Man. In the early 1950s, Marlboro was a failing filtered cigarette primarily marketed, unsuccessfully, to women. Filtered cigarettes were perceived as feminine, weak. The challenge was Herculean: make filtered Marlboros appealing to men, the dominant smoking demographic. The solution wasn't to argue the filter's merits, but to utterly dissociate the product from any whiff of effeminacy and link it to the most potent, enduring symbol of rugged American masculinity, the cowboy. Out of the ad agency's creative forge emerged the Marlboro Man, not an actor playing dress-up, but often a real, weathered cowboy, photographed in stark, breathtaking Western landscapes. Here was taciturn strength, independence, a connection to a mythic, untamed frontier. The cigarette wasn't mentioned as a product. It was a natural extension of this archetype, a small, smoldering emblem of the freedom, self-reliance, and stoic toughness the cowboy embodied. Men weren't being sold tobacco wrapped in paper. They were being sold a profound sense of identity, a connection to an idealized, hypermasculine self. Smoking a Marlboro became a ritual of belonging to this powerful brotherhood of the range, even if the smoker was an accountant in a cramped city office. The physical product was almost incidental. The overwhelming power lay in the feeling. It promised to confer the feeling of being untamed, authentic, fundamentally male. It was advertising alchemy, turning a health filter into a badge of primal manhood. The influence of this era, however, extended far beyond individual campaigns or products. It radiated outwards through hidden networks of power and persuasion, centered on the major advertising agencies. These agencies weren't just service providers. They became cultural tastemakers and agenda setters, operating at the intersection of big business, media, and psychology. They conducted extensive market research, not just counting noses, but probing fears, aspirations, and insecurities. They developed sophisticated theories of motivation, and they wielded immense influence. Fashion trends didn't simply emerge organically. They were often carefully seeded and amplified through coordinated ad campaigns and placements in agency-influenced media. Even the rituals of courtship and romance were subtly reshaped. Advertisements depicted idealized versions of love, often tied to products, the diamond engagement ring as the only symbol of true commitment, a notion significantly amplified by De Beers campaigns, the right perfume or cologne as the key to irresistible attraction, the romantic dinner facilitated by pre-packaged foods, or the perfect cocktail. These weren't merely reflections of culture. They were active blueprints, shaping expectations, defining norms, and scripting the emotional milestones of life. The agencies, through their control over mass communication channels and their deep dives into the collective psyche, architects of taste, desire, and even social behavior. This is the crucial lesson, the one often obscured by the glamour of the period or the focus on clever slogans. Asterisk, asterisk, most advertising, at its core, is designed to sell feelings, not products. Asterisk, asterisk, the Mad Men era perfected this art. They understood, with a clarity that bordered on the unnerving, that humans are emotional creatures navigating a complex world. We crave security, love, status, belonging, excitement, comfort, escape. We fear rejection, inadequacy, boredom, chaos, aging, obscurity. The product itself, the soap powder, the car, the beer, the lipstick, is frequently a mediocre solution to a tangible problem. But the feeling it promises to deliver, that's potent. That's the hook. That's the whispered promise that bypasses logic and resonates in the limbic system. Does a luxury car truly get you to the grocery store significantly better than a modest one? Often, no. But does it make you feel successful, powerful, admired, in control? That's the real commodity being traded. Does a particular brand of soda quench thirst more effectively than water? Objectively, no. But does it make you feel youthful, connected, part of a vibrant moment? They learned to diagnose the nagging anxieties of the housewife. Is my family healthy? Do they love me? Am I doing enough? The status insecurities of the middle manager. Am I respected? Will I advance? Do I look the part? The restless yearning of the teenager. Who am I? Where do I belong? How do I stand out? And then, with relentless creativity, they offered products as the tangible keys to unlock these emotional states. The vacuum cleaner sold not just clean floors, but peace of mind and domestic approval. The business suit sold not just clothing, but authority and confidence. The cigarette sold not just nicotine, but rebellion or camaraderie or sophistication. The feeling was the payload. The product was merely the delivery mechanism. So, as the late-night city hum continues its steady drone, reflecting off the glass towers built by that very era of consumption, the legacy of the mad men isn't just a stylistic trope or a nostalgic yearning for 3 martini lunches. It's the pervasive, often invisible, architecture of longing that surrounds us. It's the reason we perceive certain objects as extensions of our identity. It's the subtle pressure to constantly upgrade, to seek the next purchase as a solution to an emotional itch we can't quite scratch. It's the normalization of desire as a perpetual state, carefully cultivated and endlessly replenished. They built more than campaigns. They helped construct the psychological underpinnings of modern consumer society itself, proving that the most powerful things sold are not the ones you hold in your hand, but the ones you hold in your heart and your hopes, the dreams, meticulously packaged, whispering from every screen, page, and billboard that you, too, deserve this, and that the path to feeling it might just lie in the next thing you buy. The smoke may have cleared from the ashtrays of those Madison Avenue offices we harbor, and the very dreams we chase in the perpetual twilight of the American marketplace. The glow of the screen is the new campfire light, isn't it? That familiar, cool radiance illuminating faces long after the sun has dipped below the horizon, or before it has even risen. Like the vast, humming library of all human knowledge and interaction finally at our fingertips. And it is, undeniably, is something else entirely. The most pervasive, sophisticated, and inescapable advertising environment ever conceived. It didn't arrive with a fanfare proclaiming its dominion. It arrived with a humble, almost laughable little rectangle, a banner, and that first tentative electronic billboard, blinking naively on a web page in 1994, proclaiming, "Have you ever clicked your mouse right here? You will," wasn't particularly effective. People weren't quite sure what to do with it. Yet, its appearance was a silent detonation, because everything changed anyway. The dream of the internet as a pure, ad-free commons was fleeting. The infrastructure was expensive, the potential audience vast, and the old model's subscriptions alone felt insufficient, even antithetical to the promise of universal access. That little banner was the first clumsy probe of a new reality. Online attention could be monetized. It didn't work well, but its mere existence proved the space could be sold, and sell it we would, with an efficiency and intrusiveness that would make even the most cynical madmen blanch, transforming the digital realm into an environment where advertising isn't just present, it becomes the very atmosphere, the invisible, data-saturated air we now breathe with every digital gasp. The early web was a frontier town, chaotic and full of possibility. Search engines emerged as the essential guides, the sheriffs trying to impose order on the information chaos. Among them Google arrived, not just with a better algorithm, but with a devastatingly simple, utterly revolutionary insight about the nature of curiosity and its inherent value. Their genius wasn't just the search engine, though its speed and relevance were transformative. Their foundational, world-altering genius was realizing that the intent behind a search query was the most valuable commercial signal ever captured. When someone types best running shoes for flat feet, or divorce lawyer near me, or symptoms of anxiety, they are broadcasting a specific, immediate need, desire, or vulnerability into the digital void. They are, in essence, confessing their curiosity, their problem, their latent desire to act. Google understood this goldmine. They built AdWords later ads, not as loud banners demanding attention, but as silent auctions happening in microseconds. Behind the pristine search results page, advertisers would bid on keywords, those crystallized moments of intent, and the winner's small, text-based ad would appear, almost apologetically, labeled ad, above or beside the organic results. It was contextual, seemingly helpful, easily ignored. But it was revolutionary. They weren't just selling space. They were selling your curiosity, your declared intent, your momentary vulnerability or aspiration, packaged and auctioned to the highest bidder the instant you pressed enter. The transaction was invisible, instantaneous, and terrifyingly efficient. The quiet act of seeking knowledge became the raw fuel for a commercial engine of unprecedented scale. Google didn't just index the web, it indexed human desire and built the most profitable marketplace in history upon it. Then came the next wave, promising connection, community, the digital watering hole. Social media platforms. They burst onto the scene, framed as utopian spaces, places to reconnect with old friends, share baby photos, join groups of like-minded souls, express yourself freely. And they delivered on that, magnificently. But the gleaming surface obscured the deeper, more fundamental architecture. These platforms weren't primarily built for friendship. They were built on it, or, more precisely, they were built to meticulously map, quantify, and monetize the intricate web of human relationships, interests, and attention spans. Every like, every comment, every share, every scroll, every lingering pause on a photo, every connection made or suggested became a data point. This data wasn't a byproduct. It was the core product. The true customers weren't the users joyfully posting vacation snaps or heartfelt updates. They were the advertisers. Social media became the ultimate behavioral observation lab and the ultimate personalized advertising delivery system, all wrapped in the warm, inviting glow of connection. Your friendships, your family ties, your political rants, your niche hobbies, your moments of joy and vulnerability, these became the rich soil in which hyper-targeted ads were planted. That ad for the perfect hiking boots didn't appear because you searched for them. It appeared because you lingered on a friend's mountain summit photo, joined a Pacific Northwest Trails group 3 years ago, and your location data shows you drive near Ray every Tuesday. The platform knows you better than your oldest friend, and it sells that intimacy. The ads are dressed as content, as recommendations, as serendipitous discoveries, sometimes even mimicking the visual language of your friends' posts. It's advertising camouflaged as friendship, leveraging your trust in the network to bypass your skepticism. The platform facilitates connection, yes, but its lifeblood, its raison d'etre, is turning the tapestry of human interaction into a canvas for commercial persuasion. This transformation from a web with ads to a web made of ads required an invisible, pervasive infrastructure of surveillance. Enter the silent enablers, asterisk cookies, data brokers, and the relentless machinery of tracking. Asterisk, that first banner ad was blind. It shouted the same message to everyone. The Google auction understood your current intent. Social media understood your declared interests and connections. But the ambition grew to understand everything, to build a persistent, ever-evolving digital twin for every user, to know not just what you searched for now, but what you bought last week, what news you read yesterday, what videos you watched at 2 a.m., your location history, your device type, your inferred income, your likely life stage, your unspoken anxieties, whispered in private messages, or revealed by your rapid scrolling past certain topics. This is surveillance capitalism, the unilateral claiming of private human experience as free raw material for translation into behavioral data, which is then packaged and sold into behavioral prediction markets. Tiny text files, cookies follow you across websites, reporting back to unseen servers. Invisible pixels track email opens. Mobile apps siphon location data constantly. Vast, shadowy data brokers aggregate information from countless sources: loyalty cards, public records, property listings, magazine subscriptions, building frighteningly detailed profiles sold to advertisers. The free internet, the free app, the free service, they all have a price, paid not in dollars, but in the constant, silent outflow of your personal experience, your behaviors, your very self, converted into data points. The entire ecosystem, the websites, the apps, the devices, became instrumented, turned into a vast, distributed machine with one primary function: to observe you, to predict you, and ultimately to sell you, or rather to sell access to your predicted future actions. Your attention is no longer just captured. It is harvested, processed, and commodified on an industrial scale, often without your meaningful understanding or consent. The air you breathe online is thick with the dust of your own pulverized privacy. This brings us to the most profound, and perhaps most unsettling, consequence. Online ads don't look like ads anymore. The evolution is stark. The blinking banners were obvious interlopers. The early pop-ups were invasive pests to be swatted away. But the advertising that emerged from this crucible of data and targeting is different. It's subtler, more insidious, woven seamlessly into the fabric of your experience. It's the recommended for you section on Amazon, curated by an algorithm that knows your past purchases down to the socks. You have to squint to see the tiny label. It's the native ad on a news site, formatted exactly like an article. Passionate about skincare, whose unboxing video is a meticulously scripted ad campaign. It's the personalized email offering a discount on the exact item you abandoned in your cart yesterday. It's the map app suggesting a coffee shop that paid for placement just as you start feeling peckish. The hard sell is gone, replaced by a soft, persistent nudge that feels like discovery, like serendipity, like a helpful suggestion from a platform that understands you. The ad has shed its garish skin and learned to mimic the environment perfectly. It leverages your trust in the platform, your relationship with the influencer, your desire for relevance and personalization. It enhances it, or at least it creates the powerful illusion of enhancement. The persuasion is embedded, contextual, and often invisible as persuasion at all. It feels less like a commercial and more like the logical next step in your digital journey, a path paved with your own data. And so, almost imperceptibly, a fundamental shift occurred. By 2010, advertising wasn't just annoying, it was everywhere, inescapable, silent, normal. The bright, loud, easily ignored ads of the early web were like billboards along a highway, noticeable, sometimes garish, but outside the vehicle of your experience. The new advertising environment is the vehicle. It's the seat you sit on, the air conditioning you feel, the map on the screen. It permeates every digital interaction. We search for answers and find them nestled among commercially prioritized results. We watch videos bookended by skippable but still watched ads, or worse, interrupted by unskippable ones. Free apps track our every move. Personalization, the holy grail of user experience, is almost entirely funded by and serves the engine of advertising. We live within an ecosystem optimized to deliver them with maximum efficiency and minimum friction. The resistance faded. The constant, low-grade hum of commercial intent became the background noise of digital life, as natural and expected as the sound of traffic outside a city window. We learned to tune it out, even as it tuned into us with ever-increasing precision. The intrusion wasn't lessened. It was simply made ambient, atmospheric. Advertising stopped being something that happened to us online. It became the condition of being online. It became the air, invisible, essential for the ecosystem's survival, and impossible to avoid if you want to breathe within the digital world. We stopped noticing the water we were swimming in, even as its chemical composition was constantly adjusted to guide our movements, asking for a click to an environment where every flicker of curiosity, every digital footprint, every moment of connection is harvested, analyzed, and monetized. The internet promised liberation, a global agora of ideas, and it delivered in ways both magnificent and terrifying. Just on screens, it's in the patterns of our thought, the shaping of our desires, the normalization of being perpetually known and sold to. It whispers recommendations that feel like our own thoughts, serves us content that mirrors our unspoken biases, and offers solutions to needs it helped cultivate. The air we breathe online is thick with the exhaust of this relentless commercial engine, an engine that feeds on our attention and our data to sustain the very platforms that define modern existence. We move through it constantly, often unaware of its composition, acclimated to its presence, breathing deeply the air of a world where the act of being seen, of connecting, of simply seeking. The frontier town became a panopticon marketplace, and we, its citizens, are both the shoppers and the product, breathing in the atmosphere of our own commodification, one seamless, silent ad at a time. The silence of the room is punctuated only by the low whir of a laptop fan and the distant, rhythmic sigh of traffic far below. You tap the spacebar, the screen flickers to life, and instantly the world pours in. A curated stream of faces, places, arguments, diversions. You scroll, seeking something, connection, information, a moment's peace, but woven into every pixel humming beneath every interaction, is the inescapable truth. You are swimming in an ocean of persuasion so vast, so seamless, that its boundaries have dissolved. Advertising isn't just in the things you consume anymore. It is the water you swim in, the air you breathe within the digital sphere. From the commercial whisper feels less like a choice and more like a quaint, impossible fantasy from another century. You can mute the volume, install the blockers, pay the subscriptions, declare your defiance, and yet the tendrils find a way, adapting, evolving, becoming indistinguishable from the very fabric of experience itself. The cell is ambient, perpetual, and chillingly polite. It doesn't shout, it insinuates. It doesn't demand, it anticipates. It doesn't feel like an interruption. And the terrifying realization dawns. You can't escape, even if you want to. Consider the landscape of supposed refuge. You flee the ad-laden chaos of social media, seeking solace in a streaming service. You pay your monthly fee, the modern tithe for a promised sanctuary. The show begins, immersive, gripping. Then a pause, not for reflection, but for insertion. Advertisements bloom onto the screen, often louder, cruder than the content they interrupt. Premium tiers promise ad-free viewing, yet the price creeps ever upward. A toll booth on the road to tranquility, and even then, the platform's own trailers. Its relentless recommendations for more content within its walled garden function as advertisements for its own ecosystem. You switch to a platform funded by creators, Patreon, Substack, only to find the creators themselves in their intimate communications, softly, earnestly, promoting their sponsors, their merch, their next project, weaving the commercial. Ask into the personal narrative you paid to access. The sanctuary is porous. The transaction is merely relocated, repackaged. The ad-free oasis is a mirage shimmering on a horizon that perpetually recedes. You pay for silence, and the silence itself becomes another product, another tier, another carefully managed experience, where the absence of overt ads is merely the space filled by more subtle, more integrated forms of promotion for the platform, the creator, the lifestyle embedded within the content. And then there are the influencers. The word itself feels inadequate, a pale descriptor for this legion of micro-celebrities, trusted friends, niche experts, and lifestyle curators who populate our feeds. They didn't arrive wearing sandwich boards. They arrived sharing their lives, their passions, their vulnerabilities. They built communities, fostered genuine connection, offered relatable glimpses into worlds we aspire to or simply find comforting. This authenticity, this hard-won trust, became the ultimate Trojan horse because the shift was gradual, insidious. A product placed casually in a morning routine video. A heartfelt story about a skincare journey that just happens to feature a specific brand. An unboxing that feels like shared excitement, but is, in fact, a meticulously scripted contractual obligation. The sponsored post, initially awkwardly declared, evolved into seamless integrations where the product feels like a natural, organic extension of the influencer's authentic self. The genius, the horror, lies in this alchemy. They became human commercials, but make it feel authentic. The cell is cloaked in intimacy, in shared values, in the powerful illusion of peer recommendation. We don't feel marketed to. We feel like we're getting an inside tip from a trusted friend. The line between genuine enthusiasm and paid endorsement dissolves in the warm glow of curated relatability. The influencer doesn't break the fourth wall to sell. They sell from within the narrative of their own life, leveraging the deepest currency of all, our belief in their sincerity. The ad isn't separate. It's the plot point, the character development, the setting. Resistance feels like rejecting the person, not the pitch. This dissolution of boundaries points to the asterisk strange, pervasive truth defining advertising today. Ads aren't just outside of content anymore. They are the content. Asterisk, the distinction. Once clear as day, here is the article. There is the ad, here is the show. There is the commercial break, has utterly collapsed. The entire media ecosystem has been reconfigured around the logic of attention capture and data extraction, where content exists primarily to create contexts for monetization. Consider the recommended for you feed, your endless scroll on any major platform: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Amazon. Netflix is an algorithmically generated tapestry woven from snippets of entertainment, news, personal updates, and paid promotions. Each element is designed to hold attention for microseconds longer, feeding the machine. The ad is the content, sitting shoulder to shoulder with a cat video or a friend's wedding photo, rendered in the same visual language, demanding the same flick of the thumb. Native advertising and sponsored content, articles that look, feel, and read like editorial pieces, but are conceived, written, and paid for by brands. They live on reputable news sites, mimicking the authority and trust of journalism to deliver a commercial message disguised as objective information or insightful analysis. 10 wellness trends you need to try is often just 10 products we're paid to promote. Branded entertainment and experiences, entire films, music festivals, art installations, or video games conceived and funded by corporations, not as explicit ads, but as immersive experiences designed solely to associate positive emotions and cultural cachet with a logo. The content is the ad. The narrative is brand, mythology, gamification, and rewarded ads. Playing a mobile game. Watch this 30-second ad for an extra life. Need a hint? Complete this branded survey. The game mechanics are built around ad consumption. The fun is the delivery mechanism for the commercial message. The ad isn't an interruption. It's the next level, the necessary task. This integration is so complete, so normalized, that we often engage with advertising as content. We watch Super Bowl ads for entertainment. We follow brands on social media for their personality. We seek out unboxing videos and product reviews as primary sources of information and vicarious pleasure. The commercial intent isn't hidden. It's the accepted premise. We consume the ad willingly, often eagerly, because it is learned to entertain, inform, or resonate on the same level as non-commercial content. The sell has become the story, which brings us to the most profound, unsettling evolution. The asterisk final trick in advertising's centuries-long sleight of hand. The scariest ads don't sell you anything now. They just sell you the ultimate. Commodity in the 21st century isn't soap or cars or even data points. It's predictive models of future behavior. The most sophisticated advertising platforms The Googles, the Metas, the programmatic ad exchanges aren't primarily interested in making you buy a specific pair of shoes this instant. They are engaged in a continuous, invisible auction for the probability that you, or someone statistically identical to you, might buy shoes, or take a vacation, or vote a certain way, or develop a medical condition, at some point in the future, your attention on a news article, your linger on a travel photo, your search for anxiety symptoms, your location near a car dealership. These are signals fed into vast, self-learning models. These models predict your latent desires, your emerging needs, your potential vulnerabilities, your likely life path. Advertisers then bid in real time for the opportunity to nudge you along a predicted trajectory. The ad you see isn't necessarily for a product. It's a probe, a test, a piece of a vast behavioral conditioning experiment designed to confirm or adjust the model's predictions about you. You are not the audience for the shoe ad. You are the product being shaped and sold to the highest bidder. In the futures market of human behavior, the ad is merely the visible tip of an iceberg of prediction. Its form and timing dictated by the invisible machinery constantly refining its understanding of your probable future self. The goal isn't just a sale today. It's the ownership and manipulation of your future decision-making potential. Faced with this pervasive, intimate machinery, a natural reaction arises. Privacy. Protect the data. Shut down the tracking. Reclaim the self from the machine. Install the VPNs, the ad blockers, the tracker blockers. Use privacy-focused browsers and search engines. Support regulations like GDPR or CCPA. This movement, born of genuine unease and a desire for autonomy, feels like resistance, and it is. But in the relentless logic of the system, even privacy movements accidentally turn into advertising strategies. How? The privacy premium companies now loudly market their products based on privacy features. "We don't sell your data" becomes a powerful selling point, a badge of ethical distinction. Privacy itself becomes a brand attribute, a feature to be monetized, often offered selectively or as a premium tier, for example, paid email services promising no scanning. The fear of surveillance becomes a lever for selling alternative services. Data minimization as a new signal. Efforts to minimize data footprints using privacy tools, avoiding certain sites, become themselves valuable behavioral signals. The privacy-conscious user is a distinct, identifiable, and often affluent demographic segment that advertisers specifically target. Your attempt to hide makes you more visible within a specific niche. The performance marketing shield. Savvy advertisers leverage privacy concerns to position their methods as more ethical. We use contextual targeting ads based on the page content, not you. We respect your choices. This allows them to sell advertising services that feel less invasive, even as the overall ecosystem of pervasive tracking remains largely intact. Privacy becomes a competitive differentiator within the advertising industry. Coption of the narrative. The language of privacy and user control is seamlessly adopted by the very platforms built on surveillance. They offer complex privacy settings that few understand, framing data collection as a necessary trade-off for personalization and free services. The appearance of control becomes part of the user experience. Diffusing resistance while maintaining the core data harvesting model. The fight for privacy becomes another layer of the interface, another variable in the engagement algorithm. The resistance is commodified. The desire for escape becomes another path tracked, another preference noted, another niche market served. The system metabolizes dissent, transforming the yearning for autonomy into another data point, another selling proposition, another facet of the very environment it seeks to evade. There is no outside end, so we arrive at the quiet, chilling conclusion. Advertising didn't take over the world with a bang. It took over slowly, quietly, and politely. There was no dramatic coup, no single villainous mastermind. It was a million tiny accommodations, a relentless series of yes, but concessions. Yes, the banner ads are annoying, but the content is free. Yes, tracking feels intrusive, but the recommendations are so helpful. Yes, influencers are shilling, but they feel like real friends. Yes, privacy is eroding, but the convenience is undeniable. It's seeped in through the cracks of our desire for connection, our thirst for information, our love of entertainment, our need for convenience. It learned our language, mimicked our culture, anticipated our needs, and flattered our sense of self. It became useful, then expected, then utterly normal. It stopped feeling like an imposition and started feeling like the weather, just the condition of being connected, of being modern, of being alive in the 21st century. It perfected the art of the soft sell, the seamless integration, the ambient hum. It made resistance feel futile, or worse, eccentric, like trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. By the time we noticed the water rising, it was already too late. The infrastructure is too embedded, the incentives too powerful, the dependence too complete. We are not just surrounded by advertising, we are enmeshed within its logic. Our attention is its currency, our data its fuel, our predictable behaviors its product. We generate the signals that refine the machine that sells us back to ourselves. The glow of the screen, that modern campfire, doesn't just illuminate our faces. It illuminates the contours of a cage we helped build, one comfortable, convenient, personalized click at a time. The air we breathe is thick with the perfume of persuasion, and there is no longer a window we can open to let in something else. We live perpetually in the showroom, and the doors, though they never visibly closed, no longer lead outside. They only lead deeper in. The final ad is the world itself, playing on an endless loop, and the only remaining question is where the audience, the actors, or simply the merchandise on display, bathed in the eternal, inescapable blue light. And now, as this story slowly drifts into the distance, like the last pages of a great book closing, you don't have to hold on to anything anymore. The weight of the world, the noise of the day, it's all somewhere far behind you. Now, you've made it here, to this quiet place where nothing is urgent and everything is soft. Out there, the world keeps spinning, but here, you've stepped outside of time, just floating, just resting, just you and the steady rhythm of breath carrying you deeper. You don't need to finish the story. Sleep will finish it for you. And you don't need to stay awake for that. Good night.